My girlfriend threw away my dead wife's recipe while I was cooking it for my daughter, then slapped me. When I asked her why, she rolled her eyes and said, "You're lucky I'm willing to raise another woman's child. Most women wouldn't even look at you." I just nodded and went back to cooking. That was 8 months ago. Today, she's living in another state with nothing but her clothes. My ex-wife Liliana gave birth to the most beautiful baby boy I've ever met. Unfortunately, he died instantly because he was a stillbirth and he took Liliana's life in the process. I didn't even have time to grieve though because all my focus went into taking care of my 4-year-old daughter Abby. It was because of her that for 12 years, I never even glanced at another woman. I just wanted to keep her world stable until the time of her 16th birthday when I met Veronica. She worked at the coffee shop near my office and always remembered my order. But most importantly, she always asked about Abby, always got her little gifts like hair ties and lip gloss. She'd touch my arm when I talked about Liliana and say things like, "She sounds amazing. You both must miss her so much." Well, me and Abby had a strict no secrets policy. But I broke the rule for Veronica. Or so I thought. I came home from a date one day when Abby started squealing. "When were you going to tell me you were seeing someone?" I didn't know what to say. 16 years of parenting and I still couldn't sneak a girlfriend past a teenager. But she just giggled, "Dad, you deserve someone who makes you smile like that again." Fast forward 6 months later and Veronica moved in. The changes started small. She rearranged Liliana's spice rack because it was more efficient that way. She donated Liliana's apron to Goodwill while I was at work saying it had gotten moldy. But I just figured these were the growing pains of having a partner in my life again. Until one day when everything changed. Abby wasn't home and I was cooking homemade carbonara using Liliana's recipe. The one Abby had grown up with and loved. I was just about to add the salt when suddenly Veronica took the recipe and threw it into the garbage disposal. "You need to stop living in the past. It's pathetic how you cling to a dead woman's recipes." Before I could respond, her hand struck my cheek. Slap. "You're lucky I'm willing to raise another woman's child. Most women wouldn't even look at you." So I hit her back and sent her flying across the room. Lol JK. I just nodded and went back to cooking. You see, ever since Veronica moved in, Abby was laughing a lot more. She constantly told me how much she loved her, how happy she was to have a mom again. And the last thing I wanted to do was make Abby go through another loss. But the more I put up with it, the bolder Veronica got. I caught her telling Abby that her real mother probably would have left anyway when she thought I couldn't hear. At family gatherings, she'd pull my sister aside and sigh about how difficult teenagers could be, especially ones dealing with grief. But through it all, Abby really did seem happy. I'd come home to find them dancing in the kitchen to Taylor Swift while cooking dinner together. They started their own inside jokes that I didn't understand and would burst out laughing at random moments. I could handle whatever Veronica threw at me if it meant Abby had stability. But in hindsight, I should have noticed that it happened too quickly to be real. Anyway, a few weeks later, we went to visit Miami. Normally, Abby would sleep until noon and complain about the hotel breakfast being over. But this time there was something weird going on. At meals, Abby would pick at her food and Veronica would nod approvingly. When I mentioned it, Veronica laughed and said, "Girl stuff, we're doing a little health kick together." I tried to pull her aside and ask if everything was okay. But every time she'd just push me away and say, "Leave me alone, Dad," before going back to keeping her streaks on Snapchat and ignoring me. I told myself that it was probably just her period and it would go away soon. Well, 2 weeks after we got back, I came home from work early with Panda Express, Abby's favorite. I knocked on her door and when she didn't answer, I walked in. What I saw made my knees buckle. My daughter looked like a skeleton. Her cheekbones jutted out and her clothes hung off her frame. She was standing on a scale crying. I dropped the food and ran to her. "Baby, what happened? What's going on?" She collapsed in my arms and between sobs told me everything. Veronica had been telling Abby that Liliana would be disappointed in how she'd turned out, that she was an embarrassment to her mother's memory. I saw red, but first I needed to take care of my daughter. I carried her to the kitchen and made her favorite pasta. While she ate, I went through my phone. Because I had an ace up my sleeve, I had been recording Veronica for months. Every slap, every insult, every threat. I had videos of her throwing away Liliana's things and screenshots of her draining our savings. I'd even installed a camera in the living room that caught her poisoning the goldfish. And I was to make her regret how she treated Abby. I pulled out my phone and texted Veronica that I was taking Abby to urgent care for dehydration. My fingers trembled as I typed, knowing this would force her to rush home from work. She'd want to control the narrative before anyone else could see what she'd done. Abby pushed her half-eaten pasta around the plate, her skeletal fingers barely able to grip the fork. I helped her to the couch and wrapped her in Liliana's old quilt, the one Veronica hadn't managed to throw away yet. Her breathing was shallow and labored, each inhale seeming to take enormous effort. 20 minutes later, Veronica burst through the front door, her heels clicking frantically across the hardwood. Her face was flushed with rage, not concern. She stood in the doorway, blocking my path to the garage, her hands shaking as she gripped her purse. She launched into a tirade about teenage dieting and how I was overreacting to normal behavior. I positioned myself between her and the hallway leading to Abby's room, keeping my expression neutral. This was exactly what I'd expected. The more she ranted, the more she revealed her guilt. I pulled out my phone and showed her the screen. The recorded videos were queued up, ready to play. Her face transformed instantly, the fury melting into something colder, more calculating. She realized the depth of my documentation, saw months of her abuse captured in digital clarity. Her eyes darted between my phone and the doorway, assessing her options. The mask she'd worn for months was slipping, revealing the predator underneath. She took a step back, then forward, like a cornered animal deciding whether to fight or flee. Abby's phone buzzed from the couch. A text from her best friend Mia appeared on the screen, asking why Veronica had called Mia's mother, claiming Abby had an eating disorder and needed to be watched closely at sleepovers. The manipulation was already spreading beyond our home. From the living room, Abby's labored breathing grew more pronounced. Each ragged inhale made my decision for me. I couldn't wait to build allies or create a perfect strategy. My daughter needed help now. I scrolled through my contacts and called my sister Lisa. She was a nurse at the local hospital, someone I could trust. While the phone rang, Veronica paced the living room, her fingers flying across her phone screen. She was already working on damage control, texting furiously to whoever would listen. Lisa answered on the third ring. I explained the situation in clinical terms, keeping emotion out of my voice. She agreed to come immediately, bringing her medical bag. Professional assessment would be harder for Veronica to dispute than a father's concern. Movement from the corner of my eye caught my attention. Veronica had moved to Abby's laptop on the kitchen counter. Her fingers flew across the keyboard, and when I confronted her, she slammed it shut. But not before I glimpsed Instagram DMs open on the screen, messages being deleted in real time. I demanded she hand over the laptop to preserve whatever evidence she was destroying. She clutched it against her chest like a weapon, her knuckles white with tension. The confrontation made it clear I was monitoring her every move, that her days of operating in shadows were over. Veronica's next move was predictable. She grabbed her phone and called my mother, her voice shifting to a sob. She wailed about my paranoid behavior, how I was traumatizing Abby with delusions about her weight. Classic deflection, making herself the victim while painting me as unstable. Lisa arrived within 30 minutes, her medical bag in hand. Her professional demeanor shifted to concern as she examined Abby. She checked vital signs, asked careful questions, documented everything. When Veronica kept insisting that teenagers were just dramatic, Lisa's expression hardened. I pulled Lisa aside and showed her one video on my phone. Veronica throwing away Abby's lunch while calling her a whale. The timestamp showed it was from last week, during school hours. Lisa's medical training recognized the signs immediately. Systematic starvation disguised as concern. My first crucial ally was secured. Lisa's expertise gave weight to what I'd been documenting. She wasn't just a concerned aunt, she was a medical professional witnessing abuse. The foundation of support was beginning to form. An hour later, another car pulled into our driveway. Veronica's mother arrived uninvited, summoned by panicked texts about me having a breakdown. The cavalry Veronica had called was arriving, ready to support her version of events. My mother arrived shortly after, having received Veronica's tearful phone call. She initially sided with Veronica, expressing concern about my obsessive behavior since returning from Miami. The seeds Veronica had been planting for months were bearing fruit. I retreated to my home office and began searching through our shared computer files. In a folder marked Meal Plans, I found text messages Veronica had screenshot between herself and Abby from 2 months ago. One message stood out. "Your mom would want you to be beautiful, not like this." The timestamp showed it was sent right after Abby's school photos had come home. Veronica was already working the extended family group chat, planting seeds about my controlling behavior and suggesting I needed grief counseling. The narrative was shifting, making me the problem instead of her systematic abuse of my daughter. The next morning, my boss called me into his office. HR had received an anonymous tip about me being unstable at home. They wanted to conduct a wellness check, ensure I was fit for duty. Veronica's reach was extending into my professional life. Our family doctor, who'd known Veronica since she moved to town, dismissed my concerns during an emergency appointment. He attributed everything to marital stress affecting my judgment. When I tried to show him evidence, he wouldn't even look at it. Already convinced by whatever story Veronica had told him, I needed allies outside Veronica's sphere of influence. I texted Abby's school counselor, asking to meet privately at the Starbucks near campus, away from school property, away from mandatory reporting requirements that might escalate things before I was ready. The counselor revealed information that made my stomach drop. Abby's grades had plummeted dramatically after our Miami trip. She'd been caught throwing away her lunch multiple times. The school had documentation dating back months, a paper trail Veronica didn't know existed. That evening, my phone buzzed with a text from Sarah, Mia's mother. She'd noticed Abby hadn't been eating at their house either. The most chilling detail, Veronica had specifically instructed her not to feed Abby after 6 p.m., claiming it was for health reasons. I spent hours creating a timeline, connecting dots I'd been too blind to see. Veronica's control over Abby's eating started the same week she threw away Liliana's recipes. The symbolism wasn't lost on me. Erasing Liliana meant erasing the comfort food that connected Abby to her mother. An unexpected ally emerged when Janet, Veronica's hairdresser, reached out through Facebook. She'd overheard Veronica bragging about finally getting that girl under control. Even casual acquaintances were noticing something was wrong. I met Sarah for coffee and shared select pieces of evidence. She agreed to document any further incidents at her house, admitting that Veronica had made her uncomfortable for months with strange rules and requests about Abby's diet. Veronica must have sensed Sarah pulling away. She started telling other moms in their social circle that Sarah's house wasn't a safe environment for Abby. The isolation tactics were expanding, cutting off Abby's support network one family at a time. Abby's PE teacher reached out next, asking to meet for coffee. She'd noticed Abby's weakness during class, her inability to complete basic exercises. Another professional was seeing what Veronica had tried so hard to hide. The web of deception was starting to unravel, but Veronica was fighting back with everything she had. Each ally I gained, she tried to discredit. Each piece of evidence I collected, she countered with accusations of paranoia. The battle lines were drawn, and Abby was caught in the middle, growing weaker by the day. Veronica's campaign intensified over the following days. She sent messages to our mutual friends and the extended family group chat, expressing concern about my mental health crisis. Her texts included specific workplace contacts she'd memorized from my phone, asking them to check on me with love and support. The manipulation was surgical in its precision. I recognized the pattern immediately. This was the same isolation tactic she'd used on Abby, making others believe the victim was unstable, cutting off support systems before they could form. My phone buzzed constantly with well-meaning messages from colleagues asking if I needed help. During my morning workout, the gym receptionist pulled me aside. She mentioned seeing Veronica force Abby to weigh herself in the lobby last month. The memory still disturbed her. Veronica had called Abby disgusting while other members stared in horror. An independent witness had emerged without my prompting. My coworker Tom approached me in the break room later that day. Veronica had contacted him about my supposed breakdown, but something in her story didn't sit right with him. I warned him privately about her manipulation tactics. His ex-wife had been similarly controlling, and he recognized the signs immediately. Not everyone was falling for her narrative. That evening, I backed up all evidence to multiple cloud services and gave Lisa access credentials. If something happened to me, she'd have everything needed to protect Abby. The precaution felt paranoid but necessary, given Veronica's escalating behavior. I contacted the police to file a report. The officer listened patiently but explained that without physical injury to Abby, they couldn't intervene in what appeared to be a family diet dispute. They made a report for documentation purposes, but I left feeling more alone than before. Over coffee the next morning, I met with 3 parents from Abby's friend group. I shared specific incidents they could verify independently. As we compared notes, a pattern emerged. Veronica had imposed bizarre food rules whenever Abby visited their homes. No snacks after school, no seconds at dinner, water only, no juice or soda. They'd thought it strange but hadn't wanted to interfere. Sarah made a disturbing discovery when reviewing her family's finances. Veronica had been intercepting Abby's lunch money for weeks. She'd convinced Sarah to give it to her directly, claiming Abby was buying junk food. In reality, she was keeping Abby hungry at school. Another control mechanism disguised as concern. My phone rang with an unfamiliar number. A woman from Veronica's previous town had seen a social media post about our situation. She revealed that Veronica had been fired from her last job for bullying a teenage intern. The pattern was expanding beyond our family. My mother began questioning Veronica's version of events. My measured responses to Veronica's escalating accusations created doubt. She asked why Veronica seemed more focused on attacking me than helping Abby. The first crack in Veronica's support system appeared. Abby's Sweet 16 party loomed next week like a deadline. Veronica had been planning it for months, and I discovered she intended to announce our engagement at the celebration. The thought of that performance, with Abby in her current state, made me sick. The PE teacher shared something that shattered my remaining composure. Abby had submitted an essay about feeling like a disappointment to both her mothers. Her own words revealed the psychological damage Veronica had inflicted, documented in her shaky handwriting. At Sunday family dinner, Veronica's mask finally slipped in front of witnesses. When Abby reached for seconds of mashed potatoes, Veronica physically slapped the plate away. The crack of ceramic on tile echoed through the dining room. My parents stared in shock, finally seeing what I'd been trying to tell them. Late that night, Veronica knocked on my office door. She made an offer. Forget all this if I just let her fix Abby properly. Her eyes gleamed with a fervor that chilled me. I refused, and she left with a smile that promised consequences. Lisa and my mother met for lunch without telling me. They compared what they'd observed, and the inconsistencies in Veronica's stories became impossible to ignore. My mother called that evening, her voice heavy with guilt for not believing me sooner. While organizing Abby's medication, I made a horrifying discovery. The herbal tea Veronica insisted Abby drink each night wasn't herbal at all. The pharmacy label, partially scraped off, revealed double-strength sleep aids. No wonder Abby was exhausted despite sleeping 12 hours. She was being drugged. Veronica's support network crumbled daily. Only her mother and 2 friends from her book club still defended her. Everyone else had witnessed too much, heard too many contradictions, seen too much evidence to maintain their denial. Janet the hairdresser provided the most damning testimony yet. She'd kept notes after feeling uncomfortable with Veronica's comments. Direct quotes included Veronica saying she needed to break Abby before she got too old to control. Her own words, documented by a neutral party, revealed her true intentions. Lisa canceled her vacation plans to support us through the confrontation. Veronica threatened her nursing license, claiming she'd file complaints about unprofessional conduct. Lisa didn't waver. Family came first, and she wouldn't abandon her niece. We developed a system where Lisa checked on Abby daily while I documented Veronica's responses. Every interaction was recorded, every reaction cataloged. The evidence mounted into an undeniable pattern of abuse. Tom offered to scare Veronica into leaving. He knew people who could make her uncomfortable enough to disappear. Despite my rage, I refused. This needed to be done right, through documentation and truth, not intimidation. During an argument in our bedroom, Veronica's careful control shattered. She admitted throwing away Liliana's things to make room for a real mother. Her confession, caught on my hidden recorder, revealed the depth of her jealousy toward my dead wife. 3 families shared birthday party photos from the past year. The visual timeline of Abby's weight loss was undeniable. From healthy teenager to skeletal figure in just months, the photographs told a story Veronica couldn't dispute. Even Veronica's mother began distancing herself after hearing Janet's testimony. The hairdresser's detailed notes and willingness to speak publicly made it impossible to dismiss as misunderstanding or exaggeration. The school counselor, 3 parents, and Lisa formed an unofficial support network for Abby. They coordinated schedules to ensure someone checked on her daily. Truth created its own momentum, drawing people together to protect a vulnerable child. I leveraged Lisa's medical connections to get Abby assessed by an eating disorder specialist. The appointment was scheduled for the following week, but I worried it might be too late. Every day of delay meant more damage to my daughter's body and mind. At the grocery store, Veronica found herself cornered by concerned neighbors. In her desperation, she screamed that Abby was fat, like her dead mother. The words echoed across the produce section. Witnesses stood frozen, unable to believe what they'd heard. My parents apologized for doubting me. They offered to let Abby stay with them, providing a safe space away from Veronica's influence. Their admission that they should have seen it sooner brought tears I'd been holding back for weeks. Veronica's workplace learned about the investigation into her therapy license. Complaints had been filed by multiple sources, and her supervisor had no choice but to begin formal proceedings. Her professional world crumbled alongside her personal one. The ex-coworker from Veronica's previous town revealed the final piece of the puzzle. Veronica's previous victim was her teenage stepdaughter Claire, who developed anorexia under her care. The pattern was confirmed. This wasn't Veronica's first time destroying a young girl's relationship with food. I spent hours ensuring Abby's friends knew the truth. Teenagers could be powerful allies or unwitting enablers. Armed with facts, they formed a protective network around Abby, watching for signs of Veronica's influence at school. 7 families made a collective decision. They would no longer allow Veronica to pick up Abby from their homes. The coordination happened organically. Parents protecting a child they'd watched grow up. Veronica's attempts to claim I was poisoning everyone against her fell flat. People cited specific incidents they'd witnessed, moments that couldn't be explained away as misunderstandings. Her manipulation tactics lost power when faced with collective truth. My mother made the final observation that broke Veronica's hold on our family. She caught Veronica measuring Abby's waist while she slept, using a tape measure to track her progress. The violation of watching someone measure a sleeping child's body was too much to rationalize. The specialist's report confirmed what we'd feared. Abby showed all signs of systematic abuse disguised as health consciousness. Medical documentation added professional weight to what we'd been seeing for months. Bank records revealed another layer of abuse. Veronica had spent Abby's college savings on weight loss supplements and diet programs. Thousands of dollars meant for education had been redirected to fuel an obsession with controlling Abby's body. The Sweet 16 party was tomorrow. I faced a choice. Let it proceed and risk public humiliation for Abby, or cancel and deal with Veronica's rage. Abby begged me to cancel, tears streaming down her sunken cheeks. I arrived at the bakery to check on the cake order. What I found made my decision clear. Veronica had ordered a cake saying, "Finally perfect at 16, with before and after photos of Abby. She planned to publicly claim credit for fixing my daughter. Instead of causing a scene, I quietly contacted each invited family. I asked them to support Abby no matter what happened at the party. The maturity required to handle this with grace, rather than rage, surprised even me. The party proceeded, but not as Veronica planned. One by one, guests refused to congratulate her on Abby's transformation. Her prepared speech fell flat when no one would raise a toast to her success as a mother. Truth spread organically through the party. Guests compared notes about what they'd witnessed, sharing stories and hushed conversations. Veronica's narrative crumbled as people realized they'd all seen pieces of the same disturbing puzzle. Desperation drove Veronica to her final public mistake. She tried to force Abby to thank her publicly for making her beautiful. The room fell silent as Abby broke down crying, her sobs echoing off the decorated walls. I stepped between them, ending Veronica's performance with quiet authority. The party dissolved quickly after that, guests leaving with murmured sympathies and promises of support. Veronica's therapy supervisor called the next morning. After receiving my evidence and multiple complaints, they were suspending her license pending investigation. Career consequences manifested swiftly once truth reached professional channels. Abby finally felt safe enough to share her truth with those who mattered most. In careful, measured words, she described months of manipulation, control, and psychological torture disguised as love. Through Facebook, Claire reached out. Veronica's previous victim offered to testify about the patterns she recognized. Another survivor emerged, willing to speak truth about what Veronica had done to her years ago. I compiled everything into a comprehensive timeline. Every incident, every witness, every piece of evidence organized chronologically. The escalation of abuse became undeniable when laid out systematically. Veronica's last supporter, her mother, finally saw the evidence clearly. Faced with documentation from multiple sources, she withdrew her support. Her daughter stood completely alone. Her web of deception finally unraveled. The next morning, I organized an intervention-style family meeting at my parents' house. Everyone who'd witnessed Veronica's behavior gathered in the living room. Lisa, my parents, Sarah, Janet, even Tom from work. One by one, they shared what they'd seen. Janet read from her notes about Veronica's bragging. Sarah described the lunch money scheme. My mother demonstrated the waist-measuring incident with trembling hands. The collective testimony painted an undeniable picture of systematic child abuse. Even those who'd defended Veronica longest couldn't argue with the accumulated evidence. Her guilt became unanimous among everyone present. I pulled out Abby's laptop, which I'd finally gotten access to after Veronica left it unlocked during her morning shower. The browser history revealed her planning documents, detailed schedules for restricting Abby's food intake, research on how to convince doctors a teenager needed hospitalization for failure to thrive, even draft emails to boarding schools specializing in troubled teens. The family collectively decided Veronica had to leave immediately. My father offered to help pack her things. Lisa drafted a simple agreement stating she'd move out within 48 hours. Everyone agreed we'd present a united front. No more manipulation, no more dividing us against each other. That evening, Veronica's extinction burst began. She created multiple fake phone numbers and social media accounts, bombarding Abby with messages, each one crueler than the last, telling her she'd ruined everything, that she was just like her dead mother, weak and pathetic. My daughter's phone lit up constantly with the harassment. The message bombardment triggered Abby's first panic attack. Her breathing became erratic, her thin frame shaking uncontrollably. Lisa rushed her to the emergency room while I stayed behind to deal with Veronica. The medical staff stabilized Abby, but the psychological damage was evident. Some family members began wavering, wondering if we'd pushed Veronica too hard too fast. My mother questioned whether the confrontation had been too aggressive. Their doubt frustrated me, but I understood they hadn't lived with Veronica's daily abuse like Abby and I had. While others dealt with Abby's crisis at the hospital, I returned home to handle Veronica alone. She was in our bedroom, throwing clothes into suitcases with violent movements. The house felt different with just the two of us there. charged with an electricity that made my skin crawl. I made a choice that surprised even me. Instead of another confrontation, I began packing Veronica's things myself, carefully folding each item and placing it in boxes. The methodical action seemed to deflate her rage. She stopped her frantic packing and watched me work. My compassionate approach triggered something in Veronica. Her face crumpled as she realized she'd truly lost. The careful control she'd maintained for months shattered completely. She sank onto the bed, her body language shifting from aggressive to defeated. She arrived at the house the next morning for what would be our final face-off. We stood in the kitchen where it had all started, where she'd first thrown away Liliana's recipe. The symbolism wasn't lost on either of us. This was where her campaign against my family began, and where it would end. Veronica alternated between different tactics, trying to find something that would work. She threatened to destroy my reputation at work. She offered to get therapy if I'd take her back. She even tried appealing to our supposed love, reminding me of our early days at the coffee shop. I remained silent throughout, continuing to pack her belongings. Then she revealed something that made my blood run cold. She'd targeted our family specifically because Abby reminded her of Claire, her previous victim. She wanted to get it right this time, to prove she could control a teenage girl without completely destroying her. My daughter had been nothing more than a do-over project. Lisa arrived with papers from a lawyer, not for a court battle, but for a mutual separation agreement with documented boundaries. No contact with Abby, no attempts to reach out to family members, no showing up at my workplace. Simple, clear terms that would protect us, without a lengthy legal fight. I faced a choice. I could press charges for child abuse and drag Abby through a traumatic legal process, or I could let Veronica leave quietly if she agreed to permanent no contact. The decision wasn't about me or my anger. It was about what would help Abby heal fastest. I chose my daughter's well-being over revenge. I offered Veronica a clean exit if she'd sign away all claims to our family. No drama, no court, no public humiliation, just a quiet departure and a promise to never return. The offer required more strength than any confrontation would have. Veronica signed the papers, but not before playing one last card. She claimed she was pregnant with my child. The timing was suspicious, this revelation coming only when she'd lost everything else. Her hands moved protectively to her stomach in a gesture that seemed rehearsed. I called her bluff immediately. I offered to drive her to the pharmacy for a pregnancy test right then. We could settle this question before she left. Her expression faltered as she realized I wouldn't be manipulated by this final desperate ploy. When that failed, she tried claiming I'd abused her throughout our relationship. But when Lisa asked for specifics, Veronica couldn't keep her story straight. She contradicted herself within minutes, mixing up dates and inventing incidents that Lisa knew hadn't happened. Veronica left that afternoon with nothing but her clothes and personal items. Her reputation in our community was destroyed. Word had spread organically through concerned parents and professionals. She'd never work with vulnerable populations again in our area. In the driveway, as she loaded the last box into her car, Veronica dropped all pretense. Her mask, completely gone. She looked at me with naked hatred and delivered her final blow. She said Abby would always be broken now, just like her mother. The cruelty of comparing my daughter to my dead wife was her parting gift. I held up my phone, showing her it was recording. Just like everything else, I had her final confession captured. Insurance against any future attempts to contact us or spread lies about what happened. She drove away knowing I held all the evidence.